Chapter 7. Cherokee. White Fang hated Beauty Smith more than anyone. The little man did everything he could think of to make White Fang angry. He hurt him, and he laughed at him. He did this because he knew that angry dogs were the best fighters, and Smith wanted a good fighting dog. He kept White Fang in a pen, and one day a group of men came to look at him. White Fang ran round the inside of the pen, growling and jumping up at them. Then the door of the pen opened, and Beauty Smith pushed a big dog inside. White Fang immediately jumped on the dog and bit it. Blood came from the dog's neck, but it growled and tried to catch White Fang. The wolf was too fast for him. He turned and jumped and bit the dog's ears and face. There was more blood. The men cheered and whistled when White Fang killed the dog. After a minute, Smith went into the pen with a big stick and knocked White Fang away from the dead animal before pulling it outside. Then the men began to pay him money for their bets. White Fang was a prisoner in his pen. He could not hunt or pull a sled, but he enjoyed the cruel and deadly fights. And Smith enjoyed taking money from the men who came to watch them. When the first of the snow fell, Beauty Smith took White Fang on a steamer up the Yukon River to Dawson City. There were always men round his cage on the steamer. They pushed sticks into the cage to make him growl and jump at them. Then they laughed at him. This made him even angrier. When the steamer arrived at Dawson, Smith kept White Fang in the cage. Men paid $50 in gold to see the fighting wolf. When White Fang tried to sleep, they pushed sticks into the cage to wake him up. Some nights, Beauty Smith took him into the woods outside the town. When it was morning, a lot of men arrived. Always, one or more of them came with dogs for White Fang to fight. Usually, he killed the dogs, or he chased and bit them until they were too weak to fight anymore. He knew more about fighting than they did, and he was too fast and too clever for them. Then there was a fight with a lynx, and White Fang nearly died. After the lynx, there were no more animals left who could fight him. Until the spring, and a dog called Cherokee. Cherokee was a strange dog. He was short and heavy, and he belonged to a man called Tim Keenan. "Go to him, Cherokee!" the men shouted. "Eat the fighting wolf!" Cherokee did not move. He was not afraid. He was lazy. Then Tim Keenan put a hand on Cherokee's back and began to rub him there. This made Cherokee angry, and he started to growl. The growling got louder and louder, and it made White Fang growl. Keenan pushed Cherokee, and the dog began to run. Immediately, White Fang jumped on him and bit the back of his neck. Blood came from behind Cherokee's ear, but he made no sound. He turned and followed White Fang. Again and again, White Fang jumped on Cherokee and bit him. Now there was blood on the dog's face, but he did not cry out with pain. Again and again, Cherokee turned and followed the wolf. He did not hurry. White Fang tried to knock Cherokee to the ground, but Cherokee was too short and heavy. Then the dog turned his head to look at the men. White Fang ran at him and tried to push him to the ground. But this time he moved too quickly and pushed too hard. He went over Cherokee's back and crashed to the ground, his paws in the air. He got back on his feet quickly, but Cherokee attacked. He bit White Fang hard, and his teeth stayed in the wolf's neck. White Fang ran wildly round and round, but the dog's teeth stayed in his neck, and it was bleeding. White Fang stopped when he was too tired to run any more. At first, he lay on his side, but Cherokee pushed him onto his back and sat on top of him. The dog's teeth were still in White Fang's neck, and the wolf was getting weaker and weaker from loss of blood. The men with bets on Cherokee cheered loudly. Then Beauty Smith pushed through them and started laughing at White Fang. White Fang went wild with anger. He pulled himself up onto his feet and began to move round inside the circle of men. Round and round he went, falling and getting up onto his feet again. But soon he was too weak to get up any more. Then Beauty Smith ran to White Fang and began to kick him. Suddenly, a tall young man pushed through the people. "You coward!" he shouted. And then he punched Beauty Smith in the face. Smith fell to the ground. Next, the young man turned and called to a friend, "Matt, come and help me." Another man came across, and they tried to pull Cherokee off White Fang. But the dog's teeth stayed in White Fang's neck. "We've got to get his mouth open, Mr. Scott," Matt said. He took a gun from his coat and put it between the dog's teeth. Using the gun as a lever, he opened Cherokee's mouth. At the same time, Weedon Scott carefully pulled White Fang's neck out. "Take your dog," Matt told Tim Keenan. Keenan moved quickly to get his dog and took him away. White Fang tried to get up on his feet, but he was too weak. He lay in the snow with his eyes half shut. "Matt, how much does a good sled dog cost?" Scott asked. $300, Matt answered. And how much for this one now, after the fight? Scott asked. Half of that, Matt said. Scott turned to Beauty Smith, who was on his feet again. Did you hear that? He said. I'm going to take your dog, and I'm going to give you $150 for him. I'm not selling him, Smith said. Oh, yes, you are, Weedon Scott said. Here's the money. Take it, or I'll punch you again. After a minute, Scott finally persuaded Smith to take the money, and then he walked away. When White Fang was strong again, there was no pen to keep him a prisoner. At first, he was afraid of Weedon Scott and Matt. When Scott tried to be friendly, White Fang bit his hand, then waited for the man-god to hurt him. But nothing happened. The next day, Scott came with a piece of meat, which he threw on the ground. White Fang smelled the meat, but looked at Scott. After a minute, he ate the meat. The man-god talked to him in a quiet, kind voice. Then he put his hand on White Fang's head and rubbed it. This was something new and strange to White Fang. But he liked it, and it was the beginning of a new life for him. In the spring, Scott went away. White Fang waited all night for him outside the house. Days came and went, but Scott did not come. White Fang pined for the first time in his life. Matt wrote to Weedon Scott, "The wolf won't pull a sled, and he won't eat. He wants to know where you are, but how can I tell him? I think he's going to die." And then, one night, White Fang made a soft whining sound and looked up at the door. Seconds later, the door opened, and Scott came in. He saw White Fang and called him. The wolf came quickly, and there was a strange light in his eyes. Scott rubbed White Fang's head and ears. The wolf growled happily. For the first time in his life, he felt a very strong love for someone.